Hello, I'm Dee Brown, CEO, and welcome to this episode of HBCU. Joining me today is Washington power broker, Jarvis Stewart. Jarvis is a graduate of Prairie View A&M University, and he's the Chief Executive Officer of Highland. Jarvis, welcome to HBCU.
Thank you for having me, Dee.
Hey, man, it's my pleasure. Man, look, we got so much ground to cover, so we're going to just jump right in it.
Sounds good.
So, Prairie View A&M University. Tell me, how do you select this as your HBCU?
Well, it's a great question. I am proud that I am a fourth generation graduate of Prairie View A&M University. I was born and raised in Houston, Texas, about 45 minutes, an hour away from the university. And my sister attended the university, and a number of cousins and aunts and great aunts. So it was sort of a foregone conclusion that I too would attend, although I had great aspirations and desire to go to school at Morehouse or Fisk, Tuskegee, a number of other places, but I opted on Texas Southern, on Prairie View A&M University, and I think I'm a better man for it.
Okay, so tell me about the first day that you set foot on campus. Do you recall that day?
Yeah, no, it was. I started, like most freshmen, about a week or two before the upperclassmen arrived on campus, and it was overwhelming. I was a young kid from the inner cities of Houston, and it was the first time sort of away from my parents. Obviously, there were a number of great students and professors that I'd heard about from my sister who attended before, but it was an exciting experience. Both my mother and father, education has always been a value to us. It was not an option. We knew all of us graduated from college, and it was very important for us to have an opportunity to go on and do great things. And my mother and both my father did not have the opportunity to graduate. They both attended school but didn't graduate. And so my mother drove the ship of saying this is imperative, and in order for you to really elevate and do the great things that we all have planned for your life, this is where it's going to start. So my first day on campus was exciting. Saw a lot of folks that looked like me, a lot of students from around the country that looked like me, and was ambitious and driven and focused. And there were a lot of students, international students, that also attended Prairie View A&M University that I was not privy to, I was not familiar with. So learning that pathway and learning their experiences was equally as important as others.
Now, every HBCU has its unique characteristics.
Yes.
So talk to me about Prairie View. What are some of the unique characteristics about being on the yard at Prairie View and attending college there?
Well, the yard is, it's Panther land. It's the PV Panthers, and so we are somewhat of in a remote area. Again, we're about 45 minutes to an hour away from Houston, and it's not some place you drop by. It's a destination. If you're coming to Prairie View, you're coming there for the university and to obviously grow and learn and do amazing things in life. One of the interesting characteristics, I think, are just the student body. I mean, we have kids, students that attended the university that were long generation parents who come from a long legacy of educators and doctors and lawyers, ministers. And so it was very apropos for me to sort of fall into that and appreciate that history that the university for so many years had produced.
Right. Now, I know that I haven't attended any, but I've heard that Prairie View have legendary homecomings. and so talk to me about homecoming and sports at Prairie View.
Absolutely. So the homecomings at Prairie View were very, we always say, set your homecoming out. And we used to set it out every year. And it was exciting. It's always great. It's a great reminder of the legacy and the history and the pride and the culture of the university, like so many other HBCUs around the country,
Right.
that I've been able to attend, whether it's Howard, live in Washington, D.C. now, or Morehouse, Spelman. I mean, a number of the great universities, state and privately held universities. It's one of the things that we pride ourselves on, to
Right.
be able to invite, to attract people to come back and see so many of the students that are there and how they're exciting, and remember and knowing their journey through this HBCU experience, the good and the bad, quite frankly.
Right.
But we had some great homecomings, some great artists to come down and perform, great food, great dances. You know, obviously the Greeks would do their thing on campus, but for those 4 days, it was exciting.
Right.
And so I miss those days. I don't get a chance to go back nearly as much as my colleagues do.
Yeah, well, you know, one of the unique things about HBCUs in general is that you tend to form relationships or a bond with some of the faculties, staff, you know, different people that tend to take a vested interest in your success along that journey. Are there any individuals from Prairie View that hold a special place in your heart for supporting you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it would always have to start with my roommates. I mean, my roommates, we cut for one another. We still cut from one another to this very day. Many of them, one of my first roommates, Gary Tolbert, lives in Dallas. He and his lovely wife and his two children. He and I talk often. We still laugh about our days on the Hill, and having a great time. I would also say Dr. Mac Jones, who was the chair of the political science department. Dr. Jones is now retired and living comfortably, as I understand it, in Atlanta. He was a brilliant brain. Had researched, done quite a bit in the area of political and social science, really motivated me to think beyond Prairie View and inspired me to use, as he used to say, you know, my brain for greatness, to help our people and to expand my own reach. There's a long list. Dr. Jewel Prestidge, which was one of the first black women in the United States to get a PhD in political science. She has since gone on to glory now, but her son, Grady Prestidge, is a very good friend. He's a county commissioner in Texas right now. There's a long list of professors and friends that really sort of wrapped their arms around me while I was there, and I'm forever grateful for them.
Oh, man. So, look, that's what we hear time and time again. I have a limited experience with HBCUs, attended Alcorn State University for 1 year. So, you know, I got that love for 1 year, then went on to University of Memphis and figured out what the real world was like.
That's pretty good.
But I want to jump for a minute to your current career. You are the CEO of Highland Poe.
Yes.
Talk to me about Highland Poe and what you do.
Well, I've had, since leaving Prairie View A&M University, I've had an amazing career. And it starts with just being grateful. I'm always reminded it's not where you're from, but where you're going. And that was really inspired by my mother and so many others. I left Prairie View and had the opportunity to come and go to Washington and work for the first African-American chair of the Democratic Party, a guy named Ron Brown, who later died tragically in a plane crash in Croatia. And Ron, in many ways, while Dr. Mac Jones and so many other professors at Prairie View really inspired me to think and to write and to be strategic in my thought, Ron really showed me how to really elevate in spaces that historically I'd never even remotely thought about dwelling in. So I spent time at the DNC working for Ron and sort of traveling the country, and as I often said, being seen but not heard. I was 19, 20 years old and just a young kid from Texas, and was just fortunate enough to spend time and learn how he did it. And so my career just sort of took off from there. I later had a stint on Capitol Hill, spent time working as chief of staff to Congressman Harold Ford from Tennessee, from Memphis. Junior, that's exactly right. His father, Harold Sr., also was another key, very influential role in my life politically. I spent 5 years in Los Angeles working a little bit in the music industry, a little bit for a labor union. Dee, I've had an amazing career. And so as I look back and think of the journey coming back to Washington, I've had the opportunity to do a wide range of things in business, whether it's starting a lobbying firm and growing it to be one of the largest African-American-owned lobbying firms in Washington, creating a strategic communications and crisis communications firm in Washington as well, and also creating an ESG, DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, investor relation firm, where we advise private equity firms, asset management firms, and others on how they could think strategically, more strategically about their investing.
Right.
I also was a founding member of the Washington Nationals baseball team.
Right.
At 32 years old, I became the youngest owner of a Major League Baseball team. Granted, I only owned 1.5%, but that's not the point.
Right.
As I was often reminded by former Commissioner Bud Selig, he says that's 1.5% more than most people ever say.
Will.
That's exactly right.
Right.
So,
and I'm going to come back and touch on some of those points.
That's right. I'm just kind of
it's
giving
a lot it's a lot to unpack in everything you're saying. So
yeah.
I want to dig a little bit into number one. We can start with the Washington Nationals,
sure,
because I know that was a project that was near and dear to you, and you helped bring that team back to Washington when many people thought it wouldn't be possible. So talk to me about that journey.
Well, yeah. So I was part of the ownership team. The Lerner family is a very prominent family in Washington D.C. Real estate is their background, and they were interested in adding a minority group of mostly of African Americans to be part of the ownership structure. And it was, if I'm not mistaken, was the first time of this nature. And I was chosen to be one of those. As we went through the process, it was very rigorous. They have to do enormous background checks. It's not just about the money,
right,
which is what I've learned. And I made an investment just like my other partners did. And we were able to move at the time the Montreal Expos. If anyone, your viewers are familiar with the Expos that used to be in Canada for many years, right, we brought them from Montreal, Canada, to become the Washington Nationals and renamed them. Right. And so we were able to bring Washington back to baseball back to Washington, which was not an easy task. It took a while, but we were successful. And I'd like to think that I contributed to America's favorite pastime, coming back to Washington. Right. So it was fantastic, absolutely fantastic.
So now you built the largest African American lobbying firm.
Yes.
Right. So talk to me about that.
Well, government affairs and lobbying is sort of the lifeblood of Washington, D.C.
Absolutely.
Being able to influence members of Congress and understanding the policy and the politics and the people is very, very critical. In past years, being a lobbyist has sort of taken on somewhat of a bad name. Are there bad actors? Absolutely. There's bad actors in every industry.
Yeah.
What I have been very fortunate, however, is when I left Congressman Ford's office, I knew that I wanted to do something that a number of people that looked like me were not doing. I wanted to really advise and counsel corporations and CEOs on how to penetrate and to navigate Washington, whether it's Capitol Hill or at the time, the administration, Bill Clinton was still the president. Yeah. And so I, by that time, had gained a great deal of knowledge and understanding of how government work, both the executive branch and legislative branch, and it just sort of took off from that. It was not an easy process, but nothing worth having ever is.
Never is, yeah.
And so it took a while, and I grew it to pretty significant numbers. We had great revenue year after year. Things began to change a little bit in Washington. I didn't find it as interesting or as exciting. It opened up opportunities for me to do other creative investment, other creative sort of advisory role, take on other advisory roles. Yeah. But I'm delighted. As a friend says, when the history books are written about government affairs in Washington, Jarvis, you'll have a chapter all of your own. I don't know that that's as important, but yeah, I'm excited about it.
So you have been, or you are friends with former presidents, probably current presidents and Congress people and senators, right? So tell me about some of those special relationships.
Well, yes. I mean, I consider, Washington's a very transactional place. Let's just start there. Very transactional. And I have been very fortunate to build relationships with a number of members of Congress, and some of them I still to this very day count as friends. I counted them as friends before I began to engage them around policy issues. And others, you know, I've got to know while I was on that journey. Members of the Congressional Black Caucus who have been very, very important to my growth. From a business perspective, the Hispanic Caucus, being a native of Texas, I knew many of them growing up. I idolized many of them as a young politico in Texas. But even beyond there, one of the things that I've always prided myself on is being able to work comfortably across the political spectrum or political line, whether Democrat or Republican. You know, I've had this belief that I wanted to really focus on being able to do practical politics. And that's not too far to the left, that's not too far to the right, but just somewhere in the middle that we're able to get the best policy for whether it's around trade or healthcare, or economic development in communities that desperately need it. I actually enjoy being able to sort of work in those spaces.
Yeah. So you were instrumental in the development of the MLK monument in D.C. So it's a fascinating story to me.
Yeah.
So share with my viewers that story.
Well, I have to start this story, and I will, sort of abbreviate. This story starts with my very good friend Harry Johnson, who at the time was the national president of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. And for many years, the Brothers of Alpha was trying to raise money in order to build a memorial on the mall to Dr. King. And Harry called me one day and we had lunch at the Capitol Grill, and he says, "Hey, I got a project that I need you to engage in." And I was like, okay. So we had this long lunch. Harry paid for lunch that day. I'll never forget it because he typically doesn't. But he paid for lunch that day, and he says, "I need your help in securing this land, this patch of land on the National Mall, and raising money in order to build this memorial." At the time, my lobbying career was doing very well. I didn't really have time to do anything other than to service our clients. But when your friend calls, you have a tendency to answer. Yeah. But even beyond that, I was so moved by the idea that this would be the first time that a man of peace, a man of color, that was not a president, would be honored on the National Mall. So if you pause and think about it, it's Lincoln, it's Jefferson, it's Washington. What we always like to say, you have a king among presidents. Yeah, it was our tagline. He was a king among presidents. And it was, to this very day, the most rewarding thing I've ever done in my life, Dean. It took, I worked on the project for a little more than 10, maybe 12 years. All total, the project was roughly $200 million. My firm was very active in raising about a third, if not a little bit more than that. We had international attraction. We had 3 presidents that were on site at one time, including Bush and Clinton and Barack Obama, obviously. Yeah. It was a rewarding experience, and to this very day, I still drive by there every morning, going to my office, and I tell my daughters, this is long after I'm gone, long after they're gone. Right. If God says the same, that memorial will still be there. Right. And one of the things I think I was very smart in doing, every piece of transmission, letter, correspondence, that I received related to the memorial, I've digitized. I've made a copy and I've kept, and it's on a disc. So that way my daughters and grandkids can go and say, my grandfather helped build that place. Right. This memorial. That was significant. And it's very significant. Yeah. And it's all because it started with my friend Harry Johnson. I'm forever indebted to his vision and his passion and his drive to build a memorial. So talk to me about the role that Prairie View University played in your success. Yeah, Dee, it's unlike any other HBCU, Prairie View is a very special place. We have it's been some fantastic educators and ministers and pastors and lawyers that have walked. It's holy ground is in many ways, and You know, it's beautiful trees and great walkways and historic buildings. As I mentioned, I'm a fourth generation, and so many of my relatives that I never knew.
Yeah.
My mother would have a better sense of who they are and their role in building the university. I never knew them, but you know, I joke that if there are 15 buildings on campus or 20 buildings on campus, 10 of them are probably named after somebody that I'm related to in some way or another. But it really taught me community, taught me culture, reminded me of culture, resilience. A willingness to get things done, or ability to get things done, even when you don't have the resources. It taught me ingenuity, that you got to be creative. You know, the dormitories are not always going to be pristine.
Right.
You know, the books are not always going to be the best. But that doesn't mean you can't learn. It
Right.
doesn't mean that you don't have vision and drive and ambition to do great things. So in many ways, when I'm in Washington or in Los Angeles or wherever I may be taking a meeting, you know, I often remember that I'm a long way from home.
Yeah.
But this is the vision that my forefathers had for me.
Right.
That that I stand on their shoulders, and it is my responsibility to continue to elevate so that their spirit and their drive and their focus can do the same.
Right. So I'm sure right now, we'll have viewers at home looking at this show, and they're at a crossroads where they're trying to make a decision on where to continue the education for their young son or daughter.
Sure.
Tell me, why should they select Prairie View A&M University?
Well, we've grown significantly over the years. I wouldn't just say that Prairie View would be the only everyone's top choice. I think, like any, you know, every company is not for everyone.
Correct.
Every institution is not for everyone. I believe that you have to choose the university that works best for you as a student, or if a parent, as they go through that process with their young freshman or sophomore. You have to really dig deep and see if it's the right place for your graduating senior. And you know, I may get into a little trouble for that, but I think that's just the reality by which we all live in 2022. It was good for me, and it's been good for a number of my other classmates. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's good for my kids or for my daughters or for others. But it has really driven a great level of admiration over the years, because I've seen the work of how the administration has done so well. Dr. Ruth Simmons has been our president at the university. She's former president of Brown University in Providence, Rhode Island. She's a native of Texas, but she's a former president of Brown and a number of other great institutions. And she sort of left and came back and brought her Rolodex and brought her understanding of how to grow institutions, particularly ones like Prairie View.
Yeah.
And we are better for it. She's been able to attract, you know, other notables to come there and lecture, such as, you know, Nikki Giovanni, for example, famed poet and author, and so many other great talented sort of thinkers that really the students have the opportunity to really grow and inspire and do great things because of their life and their stories. So
tell me this, take about a minute to tell me, what do you want your legacy to be?
Wow, that's, what would I like my legacy to be? I would like my legacy, professionally or personally, or both? Both. I would say that I would like for my legacy to be one that is rooted in, you know, Ron Brown used to say this often, always keep the door open and the ladder down.
Yeah.
He says, somebody's always coming after you, Jarvis. And he says, that's a good thing. You want to be able to extend the ladder and help others that come by. They didn't always have to be African American, doesn't always have to be, you know, from your neighborhood, but that is very, very important. So I think if I had to simplify it, I always want to be known as someone who was willing to help. You know, my dad used to remind me that, you know, time is the only thing we can never get back.
Right.
We can make $1 million today and lose it tomorrow, then make it again on the following day. But time is one of those things we can never, ever, ever get back. And so as a result, I like to use my time wisely. I like to give it to people who I think are really will appreciate it, and that I can inspire to do greatness.
Right.
And so I'm hoping that when I'm no longer walking the face of this earth, that it is great things that people will say about my willingness to make time and extend a helping hand.
Right. That's a very important statement you made, because it's something that I live by. We all have 24 hours in the day.
That's right.
But the biggest difference between the winners and the losers is how we utilize those 24 hours.
Absolutely.
You like you said, you can make money, lose it, make it again.
That's the easy part.
That's the easy part. But once that time is gone, you can't get it back. You can't get it back, man. So that's why I believe in wasting no time.
Yeah.
And look, Jarvis, I'm going to close out by saying this, man. I really appreciate you taking time out of your hectic schedule to be here on HBCU to showcase your university, Florida, Prairie View A&M University. I do so many schools, I can get them all mixed up. But I appreciate you being here. And what I want to do today is award you for your commitment to historically black colleges and universities, and all that you have done to showcase the talents and the skills that come out of these very, very vital institutions. I want to present you with the HBCU Lifetime Achievement Award.
Dee, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for being on the show. It's my pleasure. And to my viewers, thank you so much for watching this episode of HBCU. And remember, without you, there's no me.